And now, here's a Dice Tower review from Fraser Mackenzie. And now, here's a Dice Tower review from Fraser Mackenzie.
I love stories. I love reading them, hearing them, telling them. I love creating them, weaving interesting characters and situations together to form a compelling plot. It's a very human trait, an interest in stories. It's one which unites us all and is as fundamental to us as the concept of play. So any game that suggests that the chance of creating or telling a good story is one I'm very interested in. 1001 Nights was a story about stories. Can you imagine a better inspiration for a game about stories? It was also the source for most of our Western ideas about the legendary Middle East, a land of cosmically powerful genies bound to rings and lamps which could be released by rubbing them, noble princes and princesses disguised and going among the common people, magic carpets which, with a word, could whisk you to any place on earth you desired, culture's worth of myth and legend, which in general is underexplored and in our hobby is often tragically misused. A genie is a supernatural being of smokeless, scorching fire that with a thought confers life-changing boons or curses. It does not make your blue minarets worth more points. So it's all stacking up pretty well for Eric Goldberg's Tales of the Arabian Nights, a storytelling game with an evocative theme, for once being used to forge an adventure story, just like the original source material did. Alright, let's tell a story. In Tales of the Arabian Nights, you'll pick a character, select some skills for them, receive a quest which you may or may not choose to pursue, and set out from Baghdad, writing the first chapter of your story. You move up to a distance dictated by your wealth level, and then you have an encounter. Alright, the excitement begins. You draw a card which tells you the type of encounter that you have. It might be with a character, a type of location, or a city. Now another player finds the card-given number in this book. This contains 12 different possible flavours of encounter. For instance, have you met a kindly wizard or an evil one? You roll a die, add or subtract some bonuses to it, and this tells you which of the encounter flavours that you're going to experience. In any case, you get to choose how you react to that encounter by referencing these reaction matrices. Do you want to grovel before the wizard, attempt to rob him, or perhaps court him, if that's your thing? Well, you can by finding the number in the matrix and making one final die roll, which adds or subtracts 1 from the number, which tells the reader which paragraph to read. Now that might sound like a lot of fiddling around. That's because it is. But finally, the reader will be able to impart your destiny. They'll be able to tell you the outcome of your encounter. Was it smart to rob the kindly wizard? No. I've talked in the past about how great games empower players by providing them with impactful, meaningful choices. But the simple fact is that you don't have any real choices in Tales of the Arabian Nights. There's simply no rhyme or reason to the outcomes of your encounters. You can't be smart or considered. Attacking a warrior might be fantastic. Helping an old lady might be the worst thing in Arabia. It's complete chaos and absolutely wonderful. Tales of the Arabian Nights has provided me with some of my all-time favourite gaming memories. It's an incredible experience, and it's one that will have the entire table laughing even before the first outcome is read aloud. Just the prospect of hiring an old hag or seducing the captain of the guard is often enough to get people smiling, offering suspect advice and their theories on why beating the prince is the best course of action. Then you get to hear your friend role-play the role of a talking cliff face. And of course, the inevitable tragedy that befalls you after you tried bargaining with an elephant will have the entire table keeling over with euphoric schadenfreude. And despite what you say, you're going to love it every bit as much as they do. Well, that's it, Gan. That's my opinion of Tales of the Arabian Nights. One of my all-time favourite gaming experiences, and one which has never failed to entertain me or my friends and family.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated...
Calm down, Eric. Steady on, mate. While it's true that I adore this game, there are 3 reasons why your group might hate it. Reason the first. Tales of the Arabian Nights is not a game. This is how it manages to break that general game design principle of providing meaningful options and get away with it. It's not a game. It's an activity. Now, there's obviously nothing inherently wrong with that. We have thousands of wonderful experiences in our lives. They don't all come from games. But it is a really important point to note, because you could easily be forgiven for thinking that Tales of the Arabian Nights is a game. We refer to it as such, and there are even some of the trappings of a game, but if you go into this expecting a traditional gameplay experience, you are going to be sorely disappointed. Tales of the Arabian Nights has points. Destiny points and story points. Generally, if something broadly character-defining happens to you, such as going insane, you'll get destiny points. And if something that moves the plot forward occurs, such as finding a lost city, story points. At the start of the game, you secretly select a combination between the two, which should add up to 20. If you ever meet those goals and make it back to Baghdad, you win. The idea being that there should be a little suspense. One player has a lot of points and they're moving slowly in the direction of Baghdad. Are they about to win the game? But of course, you have absolutely no ability or control as to how or when you get any of these points, or how many you receive from a random encounter, which makes your choice at the start of the game as to how many of each you need to win as arbitrary and false as the rest of the choices in the game. As far as game design goes, this is all really bad. If you provide players with no options, you're probably providing them with a boring experience, but providing false options can arguably be worse. If you've given the player a goal and they're driving towards it, when they turn left, they expect to go left. If they end up going backwards, well, that can be a very frustrating experience. To find out that the wheel isn't connected to anything is very disillusioning, and realising how little effect you personally have over the game world you're inhabiting or your position in it will generally decimate any motivations you had to explore that world, to play the game. And so it is for many who've tried Arabian Nights expecting to play a game with fair competition, negotiation, meaningful choices, whatever other traditional positive attributes they might expect from a game. It's simply not here. So if that's what you want, if that's what you expect, then you might consider avoiding Tales of the Arabian Nights. Reason the second. Tales of the Arabian Nights is not a storytelling game. Alright, I might be being a bit overdramatic here and maybe a tad pedantic, but this is a really serious point. Yes, Tales has you reading paragraphs from a book which form a story, so yeah, of course, it is a storytelling game, but not of the ilk you might be used to or expecting. Let me explain what I mean and why it might be an issue for you and your group. Storytelling game, well, that's a genre. Genres are these amorphous, ambiguous, non-discrete categories which are often highly subjective. One person's sci-fi is another's pandemic. And that's fine, that's what they are, that's how they work. That's why discussions about which genre something belongs in are often fruitless and rather pointless. But this form of categorization is one of the primary tools human beings use to model and understand the universe. When these models are violated, it often provokes a very strong reaction, sometimes good, but most of the time not. When people talk about storytelling games, the experience promises broadly one of 2 forms. The first is offered by games like I, Dark Overlord and Once Upon a Time, a very free-form experience where the players join together to create a cogent story, with only a few game-provided anchor points to provide structure. Now, these types of experiences are also more activity than game, where the communal storytelling is the real focus and the game's mechanisms and win condition are simply there to provide structure for the activity. Games like these really do embody prolific game designer Reiner Knizia's axiom: when playing a game, the goal is to win, but it is the goal that's important, not the winning. They appeal to a very specific group of people, those that enjoy the highly unconstrained, creative, improvisational storytelling that's required to play. For these types of people, these games are just incredibly rewarding, fun activities. Of course, if you're not that kind of person, they're just about the worst games ever made. The other type of game that's often referred to as a storytelling game offers a very different experience. These are the often rules-heavy, richly thematic games. Here, the storytelling is achieved primarily through the application of the game's mechanisms and the choices that players are forced to make under those mechanisms. This kind of system can be designed to provide a very strong narrative arc. The characters in Robinson Crusoe, for instance, might have seen lots of wild animals sniffing around the campsite, so the players decide they need wood to build defences. So they send a party to the forest, except they also need to eat tonight, which means they're going to have to split up, massively increasing the danger that one of them will get into trouble. Like a pre-written film or book, this is a reasoned, logical narrative that's relatable, sensible, and thus engaging. It also never ends well. Compare these two types of experiences to Tales then, and suddenly we find that this is a beast that's truly shot off in a perpendicular direction. It's really quite different, which is obviously fantastic. The greater the variety in our hobby, the better. But that variety does come at a price. We need to be savvy consumers and make sure we're knowledgeable about the games, the experiences we're purchasing, so we know if we're likely to enjoy them. Where freeform games offer an intensely creative and open experience, Tales of the Arabian Nights provides a book of numbered paragraphs. If you were someone hoping to invent your own narrative, of course you'll be disappointed. Similarly, the strong mechanism-driven story arc in these highly thematic games provides a golden thread to which players can attach their own embellishments and characterization. Players that are so inclined will find it very easy to roleplay their character, perhaps providing them with some motivation based on the canon of the story so far, adding to the game's story not just through their actions and choices, but through their own narration. Now, it's surprisingly difficult to do this kind of additive storytelling with Tales. Maybe you've thought of a funny reason to hire the rock, but as soon as you turn to the right paragraph, the game's likely to say, no, I tell the story, and force a strange reason for your character's often unpredictable action that's kind of related to your reaction. It's often hilarious, but for those trying to tell their own story, it rips all control from their hands. And because the personality of the character in each paragraph can be wildly different, it will likely clash with any personal perception you had for who you wanted your character to be. In short, just because you and your group enjoy storytelling games is no guarantee that you'll enjoy Tales of the Arabian Nights. This offers a very specific form of storytelling, and that's something to consider. Reason the third: game length. The game can play up to 6. Now, with any game there are proponents who think it works best with different numbers of players, but if you play with 6, realise you are going to be playing for a very long time, and it will take a considerable length of time to get back round to your turn. Partly because the whole paragraph selection process is rather unwieldy, even when you know the game well. And that process of cross-referencing, rolling dice, adding and subtracting bonuses really contributes to the stop-start nature of your story, which, by its nature, will already be very disjointed. We've also talked about how the points are kind of silly, but they're there as a clock for the game to provide an ending, and by keeping them hidden, it can add a little tension. But you might consider giving that up in favour of playing to a set number, which allows you to control the game length somewhat, or perhaps forgo them entirely in favour of playing for a set time. It is a very mitigable issue, but it is worth mentioning. And that really is it, gang. Tales of the Arabian Nights shows us that it's possible to break all the rules of game design if you've got a good reason to, and a very clear vision of the type of experience you want to produce. It also reminds us that as players and consumers, we need to be aware of what's being offered and judge a game on its own merits rather than what we expected it to do. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted to review this game is that I think it's easy for people like myself who adore Tales of the Arabian Nights to missell it. If you're looking for a traditional gameplay experience, you're not going to get it. Similarly, if you want a storytelling structure that lets you call all the shots, or one which allows emergent storytelling, that's simply not here either. But if you're ready to get together with some good friends and just go along for the ride, and pick the options that sound funniest and laugh at each other all night, you'll find Tales of the Arabian Nights one of the shining diamonds of gaming. It's a truly singular experience, and it's one that will never leave my collection. Finally, I'd like to try an experiment with you. You see, I've had some tremendous feedback based on my previous reviews, and I've had some fascinating discussions with people about some of the topics I covered. Unfortunately, most of that isn't public. So I'm going to start making addendum videos to each review where I can summarise some of these discussions. I'm hoping that this will let us have a more active dialogue, and for those viewers that are watching this video more than a couple of weeks after it's been posted, well, there's an addendum video that's available which you can look at, and I'm hoping that will round out the review a little bit or add extra detail if that's something that you're interested in. So please, as always, get in touch, Twitter, BGG, email, or the comments below. Have you had similar experiences to the ones that I've been talking about? Is storytelling in board games something you care about at all? And look out for the addendum video at this link in a few weeks' time. I'll see you then. Eric, I'm done! Okay, I apologise for interrupting you earlier, but this is really unprofessional.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.